Welcome to GlocalBuzz. Several celebrities and historical figures have undergone electroconvulsive therapy, more commonly known as shock therapy. Shock therapy has evolved significantly since the mid-20th century and is now considered an effective treatment for severe depression, bipolar disorder, and other mental illnesses when medication and therapy fail. Here we make a list of famous people who underwent shock therapy. Before moving forward, don't forget to press the subscribe button. Now back to the list. 1. Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette, the country singer who was married 5 times, married for the first time at 17 to Yves in 1960. He was 5 years her senior. As she was not of legal age, her mother was required to sign the marriage paperwork. Her mother wouldn't sign the papers as she was against the marriage, so Tammy's grandfather signed the papers which legalized the marriage. The young couple fought throughout their marriage, the primary conflict in the relationship being the employability of Yves. After Tammy became pregnant, she told him to leave, but he kept returning. She suffered a nervous breakdown after one of their quarrels, which is when her family took her to a psychiatric hospital, according to Tammy's biographer Jimmy McDonough. Doctors diagnosed her with depression, and that is when she was given 12 rounds of electric shock treatment. Upon returning from the hospital, the couple tried to give their marriage one more chance, but the problems kept coming back and the couple eventually divorced in 1965. 2. Peter Green. Peter Green, the legendary guitarist and founder of Fleetwood Mac, experimented with LSD as it was the trend in the 1970s. But he unfortunately got addicted to it, which tipped him over the edge, and he was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia. To manage it, he underwent electroconvulsive therapy in psychiatric hospitals during the mid-1970s. The shock therapy, however, had a significant impact on him, with many close to him stating that it altered his personality and musical abilities. After his treatment, Green withdrew from the music industry for several years and lived a reclusive life, working various odd jobs before slowly returning to music in the late 1970s. 3. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was one of the actors who was one of the most talked about new stars and was poised to achieve screen immortality, but was not able to achieve it because of her erratic temperament, which made Paramount suspend their contract. After being dropped from Paramount, she got arrested multiple times for drunk driving. She was transferred to the psychiatric ward by her sister-in-law, who was a deputy sheriff in Los Angeles County, after one of these arrests in 1942 to avoid jail time. Farmer was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. At the request of her family, particularly her mother, she was committed to an institution in her home state of Washington. Her sister later claimed in her self-published book, Look Back in Love, that the family did not consent to the treatment. During her stay at Western State Hospital in Washington, she was subjected to brutal treatments, including electroconvulsive therapy and insulin shock therapy, which were common but often inhumane methods used at the time to treat mental illness. She remained in various psychiatric institutions till 1950. After her release, Farmer attempted an acting comeback, mainly appearing as a television host in Indianapolis on her own series, Frances Farmer Presents. She spent the remaining years of her life tending to her parents, who had her previously committed to psychiatric clinics, doing odd jobs. She died of esophageal cancer at Indianapolis Community Hospital on August 1, 1970, aged 56. 4. Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher was known for playing Princess Leia in the original Star Wars films. She was the daughter of Hollywood royalty, Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. Carrie was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which she revealed on the Oprah Winfrey Show, stemmed partly from growing under the shadow of her famous parents. She wrote about her experiences with shock therapy in her book Shockaholic, published in 2011. In it, she revealed that at one point she received electroconvulsive therapy every 6 weeks to blow apart the cement in her brain. In 2014, she said she was no longer receiving the treatment. Fisher remained a vocal advocate for mental health until her passing in 2016. 5. Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was the Nobel laureate author who suffered from severe depression and bipolar disorder, which was exacerbated by alcoholism. He was admitted to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota after one of those depression bouts, where he was treated with electroconvulsive therapy as many as 15 times in December 1960. Instead of improving his condition, the treatment seemed to worsen his cognitive abilities, affecting his memory and writing skills. He was released in ruins in January 1961, as per FBI, who were keeping a tab on him. Ernest was admitted again to Sun Valley Hospital by his wife, where he underwent 3 electroshock treatments. He was released at the end of June and was back home June 30, 1961. The legendary author shot himself to death with his favorite shotgun 2 days later on July 2, 1961. Many scholars and biographers believe that the combination of his deteriorating mental health, shock therapy, and other factors contributed to his tragic end. 6. Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath was an American poet who was known for her sad poems. She underwent electroconvulsive therapy in 1953, an experience that deeply traumatized her and later influenced her writing. She received the treatment after experiencing severe depression, and it was administered without anesthesia or muscle relaxants, which was common at the time. Plath described the ordeal in her semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, where the protagonist Esther Greenwood undergoes electroshock therapy and experiences it as a terrifying and dehumanizing procedure. This reflects Plath's own feelings about the treatment, which she saw as ineffective and traumatic rather than helpful. Following the shock therapy and a suicide attempt later that year, Plath was hospitalized at McLean Hospital, where she received more extensive psychiatric care, including insulin shock therapy. However, her depression remained severe, and she killed herself on February 11, 1963, by inhaling gas from a kitchen oven. She was only 30 years old. 7. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney was one of the biggest stars of the 1940s, whose career went into a standstill after the birth of her daughter, Daria, who was born with severe disabilities, including blindness and intellectual impairments, after Tierney contracted rubella during pregnancy. The guilt and grief over her daughter's condition contributed to Tierney's declining mental health, which resulted in not being able to concentrate on her work and getting dropped from movies. She consulted a psychiatrist and was admitted to the Institute of Living in Hartford, Connecticut, where she received 27 shock treatments. Tierney found the treatment distressing and fled the facility, but was caught and returned. She tried to kill herself by jumping off her mother's apartment, but decided against it as she didn't want to be found as a mangled corpse. Despite her struggles, Tierney eventually made a partial recovery, married Texas oil man Howard Lee, and lived a more private life. She wrote about her experiences in her 1979 autobiography, Self-Portrait, where she candidly discussed her mental health challenges and the impact of shock therapy. 8. Clara Bow. Clara Bow was the silent film icon who was the first actress to be nicknamed It Girl. She was the top box office draw in the late 1920s, but it all came to a halt when she began showing early signs of psychiatric illness. Some historians believe that she might have inherited her illness from her mother, which might have been exacerbated by the pressures of Hollywood fame. By the early 1940s, Bow had largely withdrawn from public life and was living in seclusion. Her mental health continued to decline, and she was institutionalized at various points. During one of her hospital stays, she reportedly underwent shock therapy, which was a common treatment for severe depression and other mental illnesses at the time. However, like many early recipients of shock therapy, she likely experienced distressing side effects, including memory loss. Clara left the institution and spent her last years in Culver City, under the constant care of a nurse, Estella Smith, living off an estate worth about $500,000 at the time of her death. In 1965, at age 60, she died of a heart attack. 9. Judy Garland. Judy Garland underwent shock therapy as part of her treatment for mental health issues in 1949. Garland struggled with substance abuse, depression, and anxiety throughout her life, exacerbated by the pressures of her career, tumultuous personal relationships, and the demanding environment of Hollywood. At the time of therapy, she was cast in the title role of the film, Annie Get Your Gun. She was nervous at the prospect of taking on an unglamorous role which she was not used to. Busby Berkeley, the director of the film, was severe with Garland's lack of effort, attitude, and enthusiasm. So he had her fired and replaced with Betty Hutton. Garland underwent an extensive hospital stay at Peter Bent Brigham Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. It's said that the therapy was traumatic for her, contributing to memory loss and further emotional distress. Despite these challenges, Garland maintained a remarkable career in film, music, and theater. However, her battles with mental health and addiction continued throughout her life until her tragic death from a barbiturate overdose in 1969 at the age of 47. 10. Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent, the legendary fashion designer, was drafted into the French military during the Algerian War in 1960 at age 24. However, just weeks into his service, he suffered a severe mental breakdown, reportedly due to the intense hazing and stress. He was hospitalized at the Val-de-Grâce Military Hospital, where he was subjected to psychiatric treatments, including powerful sedatives and electroshock therapy. This experience was deeply traumatic for Saint Laurent. Shortly after his hospitalization, he was also fired from his position as the head designer at Dior, which further exacerbated his mental health struggles. However, with the support of his partner, Pierre Berga, he eventually recovered and went on to establish his own fashion house, Yves Saint Laurent, which became one of the most influential brands in fashion history. Despite his success, Saint Laurent continued to struggle with depression, anxiety, and substance abuse throughout his life, which he attributed to shock therapy. 11. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh underwent shock therapy as part of her treatment for bipolar disorder, whose early symptoms began to surface in 1938 when she was 25. Throughout her life, she struggled with severe mood swings, depression, and manic episodes, which affected both her personal life and acting career. The star suffered a miscarriage in 1945, which furthered her depression. The actress underwent electroshock therapy to cope with it, which was a common but controversial practice at the time for mental health conditions. The treatment left burn marks on Leigh's temples, and her friends noticed a change in her temperament after this. Despite these treatments, she continued to experience episodes of instability. Her condition put a strain on her marriage to Laurence Olivier, and they eventually divorced in 1960. She finally succumbed to tuberculosis in 1967 at age 53. 12. Lou Reed. Lou Reed was the founder of the rock band The Velvet Underground. When he was 16, Reed's parents sent him for shock treatments in an attempt to cure his bisexuality and rebellious behavior. This experience had a profound impact on him, and he later referenced it in his music, particularly in songs like Kill Your Sons, where he expressed anger and trauma over the ordeal. He later recalled the experience as having been traumatic and leading to memory loss. Despite this, he went on to become one of the most influential figures in rock music. That is it. Thank you for watching. Check out other videos from this channel. Please press like and share on this video, and don't forget to press the subscribe button. Until next time.